All right, here we go. Looks like we are live. Certainly appreciate those of you who are joining me live on this Thanksgiving morning. Going to be a fun little podcast here. Look at a UF game that I very confident about, and we'll have a good little discussion. I talked to Bud yesterday, and Bud, I think he's feeling okay. Bud's voice is a no go. Bud sounded uh, like you ever go over and spend the night at somebody's house when you're 10 years old and try to stay up all night and end up whispering, I don't know, he just, Bud was whispering to me about whether or not I'd seen the all 22 for the Vandy game. And that was his voice. So it is a one-man show this morning. Bud will be back with us probably for the instant reaction. But the show goes on, and here we go. As always, we'll thank our friends, Tarpon Cellars, elite wine company that we've been so fortunate to pair with, who are really only continuing to explode on the scene with some fantastic wines. Always going to thank Louisiana Hot Sauce, the good people at New Iberia, Louisiana, number one in our books, and Congruity HR. I want to thank Matt Lewis. He's been nothing but fantastic for us, for our business, and have a big addition here that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. So, a fantastic organization called Student Veterans of America has decided to pair with Congruity as well. Student Veterans of America does more or less what you think they would do as far as helping veterans with educational opportunities. And they happen to have a CEO that is a proud Florida State fan and listener of the Nolecast. And he has brought on Congruity to handle all of their internal operations when it comes to payroll. And we're so very proud. They listened to it on the Nolecast, been in touch with Matt Lewis for a couple weeks now. A couple months now. Been working with him for a couple weeks now, but it was a perfect fit. They were able to work with him, save him money. And as I say, if you can get better service and save money while using a partner of the Nolecast, then that's a fantastic partnership. So as always, thank you to Matt Lewis and his team and Crudy HR for the vital role that they play in making the Nolecast possible. All right, y'all. No mimosa at this point in time. Going to talk about a Florida team that is a little bit hard to make sense of. They're certainly wildly explosive on the offensive side of the ball is where we'll start this conversation. And at times they can be wildly explosive. They live and die by that explosiveness. Um, Fortunately for Florida State, one of the better teams in the country in stopping explosive plays. So just from the most macro of reviews, I think this is a fairly good look for Florida State overall. When you look at individual personnel, obviously Richardson is like a legit huge. I mean, he is a athletic outside linebacker who happens to occasionally flash the skills that are very much needed to be an elite quarterback. Problem with that is that the skills that he shows sometimes are not there on the next play or the next season, the next series rather. He is. This is a little bit of a strange comparison to make on a Florida State podcast because you guys didn't see a whole lot of Jeff Sims. But when I watch Anthony Richardson, I almost see him as like a rich man Jeff Sims. The upside's higher. The plays that he makes it like makes your jaw drop even further. And there's also throws that he makes. Particularly, there's some throws in the LSU game where you're like, dude, if this is what this guy's going to be, then we're all in a decent amount of trouble. But like I said, the consistency's not there. Can be both erratic with accuracy of throws and decision making. He is very hard to sack, as you would imagine. Moves very well in the pocket. And just looking here at some of Bud's notes, he's 18th in sack rate allowed. Those that are charged with protecting Johnson on Florida's offensive line is probably the best offensive line that Florida State's seen so far this year. So I'm very interested to see what this looks like. We've talked about trying to get better barometers for how good this team's playing, and I think from an individual unit perspective, we're going to get that a little bit about the defensive line. I love this. We'll get a good idea as to we'll just get a good read on where these guys are and if this unit is playing at the level that you think it is. Um, There's a little bit of there's a little bit of mystery at tackle for them. Michael Tarquin, I believe is how you pronounce his name, has been the starter. Was seen, I believe, seen wearing a boot. Not that that means a whole lot. As a former Florida State head coach, was fond of putting a boot on just about anybody whose ankle was even the least bit sore. But even if Tarquin is not available, they've got a kid named Austin Barber, very good player as well. So obviously, we're all looking at Florida State's depth chart. We're going to talk about the receiver position. But if you see that one place where there's another starter missing, I'll just tell you in general, the depth is decent there, and Florida's offensive line is uh is a good unit, and something that I'm excited to see how Florida State plays on Friday. Backs are really good. Johnson is the more consistent of the backs. Etienne, um, I mean, if you're a running back with a name like Etienne, it would only make sense that you're the more explosive one. But Florida's backs are really good, and this is the strength of their offense. The past two units that I'm talking about, and it's only magnified if they get good Anthony Richardson. So wide receivers, I just referenced it. I didn't, I make jokes about like having to call fraternity kids from the IM fields all the time. I don't think Florida's quite there yet, but um, if the reports from yesterday are true, then Florida's going to be running as thin at receiver as I'm trying to think of a Florida State unit in recent comparison, but very thin. Yeah, that's great analysis, isn't it? So exceptionally thin at receiver. I do want to see who actually plays, and I don't know that there's a whole lot of gamesmanship to be gained by false reporting availability. Um, but just let's see if they're really down that bad. If they're really down that bad at the wide receiver position, then that would change how I approach this offense. And you can be all the more aggressive about stopping the run if you want to. Uh, let's see. I'm just looking here. I mean, if it's true that you're looking at like, well, we'll just see. I mean, you're potentially looking at a redshirt freshman, a freshman, and uh, Pearsall, who's been a decent kind of safety net type target available for them. I don't know that they're necessarily like their tight ends are a position that they're going to be able to lean on as well. This is a rough spot for them, and if reports are true, then they're going to be exceptionally limited in that part of the ball. So as far as the style of offense, again, their style may be impacted by their availability of players and talent, but they are spread a little bit under center, awful lot of run, and when they really get cooking, they like most teams with a really athletic quarterback, um, use a lot of play action boots and screens to just kind of make you confused, not trust yourself, and allow that 235-pound athlete that probably runs like a legit 4.55, which by the way is a very fast time, relatively speaking, that extra quarter second of hesitation or indecision from a defender. So again, if they start to be successful, the offense really cooks when they can have a little bit of success with the run, start to work play action, screens, and then they love to try to, like I said, they live and die on explosiveness. So it doesn't come as a surprise when I tell you, they love to try to uh, mess around a little bit and then hit you with a 65-yard post route or something like that. So this is an offense that thrives on explosiveness, as I started the conversation here. And Florida State's one of the better teams in all of college football when it comes to limiting teams for large explosive plays. So yeah, we'll just have to see what it looks like. This is a little bit of a mash unit. There's some people in the chat who have compared Florida State's wide receiver unit of 2000, or excuse me, Florida State's linebacker unit of maybe 2017 and 18 to where UF's is. And yeah, that might be a decent comparison. Perhaps UF's even in a little bit of a worse situation. So how do you potentially try to attack this offense from a defensive perspective if the depth chart is correct? I think goal number one has to be that you can't let them just beat you with their strengths that I talked about. You can't let them beat you with run game. Realistic if you're playing the odds, and acknowledge the inexperience and injuries that they have at wide receiver. A solid game plan of committing to stopping the run and the deep ball, allowing short stuff. If he proves he can make those throws, then so be it. And make Anthony Richardson be a quarterback that can, consistently operate on short stuff and, wonderful football cliche of methodically move the ball down the field. Nothing for 65, nothing where you consistently allow 5, 6, 9, 12 yards on the ground. And I think you can, bottle this offense up relatively easily. Now, maybe I'm just being wildly optimistic here, but I just don't see this offense having a whole lot of success. Now, I will acknowledge that Florida does have some of the things that has historically given this defense problems. They run a lot of bunch sets. I'll be interested to see how much zone you can play. We've talked about some of the general theory that Florida State has struggled to play zone a little bit, and I think that may be a little bit overblown, but there's some truth to it as well. Yeah, if you can play zone here, it's going to help you an awful lot, both in the fact that Richardson at times has struggled to diagnose some things, particularly when he gets flushed, and also just general football 101. When you've got a wildly athletic quarterback, it is more beneficial to play zone than it is man to man, because you don't have to turn your back to him, and you can see a guy who has averaged, I think, 8.1 yards carry or something like that when you back out sack adjusted yardage. That's what Anthony Richardson's YPC is when you back out sack adjusted yardage. And he's a big athlete. He's a really good runner. And if you can play a zone and kind of see that big athlete start to turn into a runner, rather than having to adjust with your back to him, then all the better. So shout out to, again, the chat here. Been a crazy week for me. I won't, bore you guys with the details, and wouldn't be best to do so anyway. But just had a headache last night, decided to postpone doing a late night Nolecast, and wake up here with my Nolecast family and all the other wonderful degenerates who will either listen to this on a podcast as they are on the ride to the game or seeking escape from family. But the real degen class here is the group live at 8 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning, and I ever so appreciate you guys jumping in the chat and supporting the podcast that we do here. So, want to thank the legendary team. Been talking to Shannon all week. He's been in Tallahassee, more than ready for the game. Nobody's a bigger Noel fan than Chad, and uh, Chad is great in the fact that he's a sponsor and a wonderful supporter of the Nolecast. But he's all the better in the fact that he'll jump in the group text and give you a pretty good idea as to what his game preview is here as well. And that's awesome. So, two diehard Noles who have been incredible in their support of the Nolecast, and obviously have found avenues to support the broader program as well with some of their NIL support that they've recently offered. So the fun part of the conversation here for me is what it looks like when Florida State has the ball. I don't think that UF's defense can really stop what Florida State's doing right now. And are there some stats out there over the past 4 games or so that are a little bit inflated from Florida State's offensive perspective based off who they played? Yeah, absolutely. But you're playing somewhat of a level of opponent that you're going to be playing again on Friday. So I don't know that it's, entirely appropriate to just dismiss those stats. Again, to, reiterate one of the brighter minds in college football, which is that of my co-host. I was able to, one, look at his notes when we talked yesterday, and he whispered to me all his ideas on the game. And he also sent me a couple clips from Cover 3. Bud loves the over on the team total when it comes to Florida State scoring, which I think is around 32.5 or something like that. So not just me who is of the opinion that Florida State has success here. My co-host whose voice has been stolen this morning, also thinks along those lines. Not a great defense by any means. 71st in S&P plus. The defense, the decent offenses that it has faced, it scored. Excuse me, the decent offense that it has faced has scored on them 26-38 in the case of Tennessee, 42 for LSU, and 42 for Georgia. So really big on the inside, real big, like 405 pounds big at times. But I'll be interested to see. Watson's the individual that I'm talking about there, who, no knock on him. Dog, if I could have played big time college football, I would have done so as well. And if I had to, get to 380 pounds to do it, I guess that's just the price we pay. So better athlete than I am, Mr. Watson. I'm certainly not taking shots at you, but a guy who's big enough to where he can really only play, probably 20, 22 snaps a game. I am interested to see, and Bud, I believe, talked about this on the past Nolecast. If he didn't, maybe it was just a phone conversation. I do think that you try to run some tempo here. You test what appears to be a depleted depth chart, not just at wide receiver, but across the board. And if you can get them stuck in a situation where Watson has to play 5 snaps in a row or something like that, I don't know if it's fair to completely say you're playing 10 on 11, but I think it's pretty close. Their linebacker Miller, in my mind, maybe their best defensive player, is suspended for the first half for targeting. Pretty significant drop off from him to all of the other linebackers. Florida's DBs are okay. Their safety is a gentleman with the last name of Torrance, who again is one of their better defenders in general. And he got hurt against Vanderbilt, and I'm not sure we're really going to see him. So look, maybe I'm just misguided. Maybe I'm just got got too much, uh, you know, too much success in these past 4 games, or jaded my opinion, or not allowing me to have clear thought here. But I think this goes Florida State's way. And if I wasn't gonna, get in trouble for YouTube copyright violation, maybe I'd just play Seminole win here for the next 2 minutes, and we could just sit here and vibe on it. But unfortunately, that is not an option, and I'll have to return to the regularly scheduled podcast. Florida's defense is that runs predominantly 4-2-5. They try not to allow the big play. They do normally have to blitz to get pressure. It's a decent defensive line, but it's not something that is particularly special, and it's not something that you can just go out there and let them kind of eat on their own. I hadn't planned that as a segue, but I can't imagine that there's going to be a better possible segue for me to have there than to mention how you can eat on your own or with a group of your best friends at Charlie Park this weekend, or any of the fine for the table establishments. Would encourage reservations if they are still available. I looked last night. I saw a couple things available for Sunday on their brunch. So if you're going to stick around for the weekend, I would certainly add that to your docket. But Charlie Park is doing a ton of things right now. I'd go to their website, charlieparkrooftopbar.com, to take a look at what his options, or what the options are. Make a reservation to maybe go up there and get a cocktail in the afternoon leading up to the game. And it is a brilliant place. That is absolutely one of the gems of Tallahassee, and undoubtedly, in my opinion, Tallahassee's best rooftop bar. So big shout out to those guys. Back to discussing what it looks like when Florida State has the ball, and how they're going to try to attack this defense, in my opinion. Look, you should be able to do both. You should be able to run the ball. You should be able to pass on them. You got to be smart with the football. I talked about running tempo. I think you do want to run tempo. At times, I think this is just a comment of general watching football. At times, quarterbacks who haven't run tempo for a long time, I think, can be sometimes overly aggressive. You don't have to do that here. Be patient. Don't press. Look, you can get this defensive line blocked up. You can wear this defensive line out, in my opinion. I think that in the fourth quarter, if you're churning into UF depth chart, and you're having them play, third stringers or worse, then you could look at Florida State winning by 20 points or more. And maybe I'm just being a big having a big fanboy moment, but I think this one uh, goes very much in favor of the Noles. So you got a month before the bowl game. I'd let Jordan run. I'd let Jordan make, not that this is going to be some like national uh, statement game, because UF lost to Vandy last week and hasn't done their share as far as getting into this game as a ranked team. But this is just another moment for Jordan to fully cement the incredible turnaround that he's had. And whether it be from an NIL perspective or whether it be from an NFL draft perspective, I'm sure Jordan's going to want to put out, one final solid piece of tape, and let those that are going to be tasked with paying him, again, whether it be a Sunday team or somebody else, look at one more brilliant product and know that they've got to either do everything they can to pay him, or an NFL team tries to figure out how a absurdly talented athlete works into their plans on Sunday. So um, want to talk about our friends at Prize Picks. If you are listening to this here live with us, or immediately afterwards, I want to point out to you that they are offering a free square today in the form of Minnesota Vikings wide receiver, the gritty master himself, Mr. Jefferson. It is, I think, zero point 0.5 yards of offensive productivity, or perhaps it's receiving yards, but it's as close as a free thing as they can give you. I don't know. I know Bud and I've talked about this, but they recently offered up like a 6-play 25 multiple. That's a you know 20 putting a 25 times on it can make almost any amount of money pretty appealing as to what could be there on the back end. But the best thing about this free square, y'all, is that 6-play 25 multiple basically turns into a 5-play 25 multiple. If you just want to do 2 plays and you think there's one out there, whether it be a pro game or that of what we'll look at on Saturday, or Florida or Friday for our particular example here, then you could play 2 and a free square, and I think you get like 3 times back if that hits. So go look at the exact multiplier on that one. I don't want to overstate it, but I did put it in my tweet earlier this morning from the Nolecast account. Prize Picks has been a brilliant sponsorship and a brilliant partnership for us. Blown away by the support that we've received from y'all, as far as how many of you that have signed up and played. And just thank you for that. And I can tell you that I've both, won money from them. More importantly, the money that I won from them, they actually put in my bank account. You'd be surprised how that doesn't always coincide with each other. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, because I've gotten to appreciate a much more wider scope of college football this year. So as far as prediction times, I'm going to say something to the effect of 41-20. I think Florida State wins here. I think Bud, let me just look real quickly. Sorry, bad podcasting, but look at my phone. Bud on the prediction has it at 38-23. So we're not all that off. If you guys have any questions here over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm happy to just field your questions from chat, and we can go from there. I saw where we had a question earlier in the show about Brock Glenn's commitment. Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's a instance of coaches just sticking with it. And a kid commits to a program like Ohio State. In years past, I'm not sure that Florida State necessarily has the chest out, chin up approach to continue to recruit and pursue a kid. And to be fair, your program hasn't been on par to even allow you to think about talking seriously with a kid that is otherwise committed to a program like Ohio State, with where Ohio State is right now and where Florida State's been. Certainly, I think the record played a significant role here. I do think that, Florida State's doing everything they can, both on the field and otherwise, to be very competitive. And that's a good thing. I think there's some Um, you know, look, winning games really matters, and I don't think you're going to fully feel the impact of this until next year. But I do think that there's a case for a strong close, and there may be even a couple kids on the board there that Florida State has a chance at that the general public isn't aware of, and that is directly tied to the performance. But as far as like a whole, hey, we got a chance to do something special. That's the 24 class. I mean, it takes a while, both for good and bad, to process itself and kind of work its way into the recruiting cycle. And I say that all the time. If a team is having a really bad stretch, a lot of times it takes 2 to 3, or really a lot of times it takes 4 weeks for you to kind of see that actually um, turn into decommitments. If you're familiar with like leading and lagging indicators, kids decommitting because of performance is like one of the most lagging indicators that there is out there in all of college football. Our old friend Kesna ask about the situation with Mr. Sam McCall. Yeah, man, it looks like uh, it looks like it's a kid who's just going through a little bit of a rough stretch as a freshman, and if he transfers out, so be it. Obviously, there was a post on social media about that 10 days or 2 weeks ago or so. Um, Culture's pretty good in this locker room. I mean, it is. I have to give Mike credit that. Now, not that doesn't mean like 100 guys sit around and hold hands and sing kumbaya, but there's a pretty general high level of commitment and buy-in. And if a guy doesn't want to be around, then so be it. And um, yes, Sam McCall was the highest rated recruit in last year's class, I believe. Perhaps Armella was, according to which service you look at. But man, you can go get another. I'm not dismissing kids by any means, but Florida State losing a kid in the secondary is not something that they can't recover from. That's a guy in McCall that I think is just general freshmen when they go to college sometimes have problems, sometimes get homesick. You combine that with maybe a kid who wants to play corner but is kind of got a little bit more of a safety skill set, and there may be some. It may be a guy that just wants to go play. Go play DB at another school or something like that. I don't know. Certainly wish him the best. Let me look here and see if there's any more intelligent conversation offered rather than some of the more recent dribble that looks to be coming from the UF side of things. Um, Sorry to our podcast listeners. I know this is not great content here. Yes, unlike the LSU game, this computer does actually happen to be a touch screen. A little bit of an inside joke there, but good times. As far as I see a lot of people predicting more or less the same thing. A lot of predictions that have Florida State winning by anywhere from kind of 14 to 18 here. Ryan McGuire in your Brock Glenn comment I talked on, and yeah, Florida State must take advantage of Miller being out in the first half. I completely agree with. Oh wow, Rick Flair made his way into the chat today. Thank you, sir. An all timer. Yeah, that's pretty much what I see as far as questions that I wasn't able to otherwise address. Like I said, if y'all have got anything else, I'll try to hit it tonight. Nolecast listener Josh Ross is over at the World Cup in Qatar. That is incredible. Going to the Brazil game tonight, dude. That is incredible, Josh. Awesome. Have a great time, man. I really appreciate you checking in out there. So Kesna asked if you haven't already talked about it, can you talk about how people are not giving UF enough respect? And then if AR has a good game, this could be an interesting game. Well, perhaps I'm one of those people, Kesna. I just think that this is not a great fit for Florida in general. I am interested to see what the weather looks like. It does look like we could get some rain. That would, in my opinion, benefit Florida to an extent, but it's not like Florida State can't, also uh, run the ball. And but being able to run the ball and then hit the occasional big play is a little bit of a recipe for a rain game. So yeah, I would think if you get the weather involved, then maybe I would take my 21 point prediction and scroll that down to 16 or 17 or something like that. But yeah, hey, look, if AR-15 comes out and has like the best game of his life, then maybe this is a competitive game. I don't know that this is a game that he could just like necessarily take over and dominate. I talk about the fact that this isn't a great fit for Florida. Um, I heard I'll give credit to Josh Pate. This is not I try to do that. I honestly don't try to rip off other people's content and stats and present them as my own. Perhaps others could learn from such an activity. But Josh Pate stated that UF is giving up out of 131 teams, Florida's 126 on third down conversion rate giving up from a defensive perspective. Florida State's sixth in the country when it comes to third down conversion rate. That is a stat that you don't want to live on. Football is a sport that is of relatively small sample size. And even going into the final regular season game, third down stats are not, there's not a huge sample size there to judge that by. Obviously, as large as we're going to get, but that's just an example of why when I look at this, I just don't see this being a good fit for this for Florida and where the program is right now overall. Let's see more just gibberish, which your life's good, dog. If you're, at 8:45 in the morning and popping off on YouTube on other people's show. Appreciate you jumping in, and any comment is only that of which magnifies the Nolecast via the YouTube algorithm. So that's awesome. Okay, so portal talk. Hey, look, I'm gonna put the transfer portal, NIL conversation, all of that stuff on hold. Got an incredibly important game here tomorrow. Let's focus on that and acknowledge that as soon as that game ends, we're all going to just talk about uh, recruiting, obviously recruiting, NIL, and we're going to talk about keeping players on this roster if possible, and certainly NIL will be a large part of that as well, at least in theory. So let's table those discussions for after the Florida game, but I will do so by acknowledging that they will be like the dominant, dominant driving force of a lot of what we talk about. Most important question of the day, ask Jeffrey: ham or turkey? I'm not a lover of turkey in general, although there are certainly some great turkeys out there, uh, and I do think the turkey has its place at Thanksgiving, but I think it's there to be shared with other places. I think Bud does a pretty large brisket on Thanksgiving Day. Maybe I'm just the consumer in me went out and bought a big rib roast that I'll cook for myself and some of my wife's family later today. So I like to have a little something else. And for the ham people out there, that's a pretty great thing to be able to go to as well. I love the ham always for the day after, sandwiches and leftovers and things like that. So, um, now, this final question here comes from Stephen Britt. Stephen asked, should we be worried that Brock Glenn and OSU parted ways because they found a better quarterback in Kane Holds, and Glenn has had a mediocre year? No, I really wouldn't worry about that. I mean, evaluations on a lot of these guys are made more about what they do in front of you, what they do in camp settings. I'm not saying that you just dismiss a kid's senior year, particularly if I remember correctly. Glenn doesn't play at a particularly high level of high school ball, so I'll have to go look at that, Stephen. And if there's been just dramatic fall off, then that would catch my attention. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. And look, you take Brock Glenn with the acknowledgement that you're taking Brock Glenn because you want to stack quality arms. You want to get in the habit of signing quality high school talent. And if you have Brock Glenn in this year's class and you signed a quarterback last year, and then you've got a kid out of Savannah next year that you're exceptionally excited about, that's the formula for winning. You don't sign, a kid with the idea that this kid has to be the guy that's going to, define the quarterback position for you over the next 2 or 3 years. You sign enough quarterbacks to where you feel, collectively comfortable with the room, and you let the numbers work out on your side. So I think Brock Glenn's a great piece, and you sign a good to great piece every year at quarterback, then you are not in the situation that that Florida State has found itself until Jordan Travis's ultimate emergence about halfway through last year. So I do think we had one more recruiting question that I'll try to get to, and then I'm going to wrap it up as I've got to start to get ready for the day as well. How am I feeling about Baxter? Is he going to show up at Doak tomorrow? Yeah, we'll just see. About Baxter in general, I don't know that he's scheduled for an unofficial necessarily. I do know that from what I can see and glean that they're kind of putting together their final official visits for this year's class, trying to time those up to see when you can get kids in on particular weekends. I do think that December 17th or 18th weekend will be a pretty good push for them. I also think if you saw yesterday that they announced that they're going to be breaking ground on the football only facility. So, maybe that's something where you're able to get a few more people in that weekend that are not just recruits, and you're able to have a decent kind of final push on some of those kids. It's still wild to me that early signing day is as late as it is in December this year. And if you can get kids in on the 17th for an official visit, with signing day being what, the 22nd, then you got to feel like you got a pretty good chance to put your best argument out there. So um, it's been a hell of a lot of fun, y'all. I don't mean to sound cheesy, but I love waking up and spending some time with y'all in the morning. I've done this for 10 or 12 years now, and many of you guys feel like distant cousins. I don't know if you're family members, but you're certainly distant cousins, and I'm a big fan of all my cousins. So appreciate it. Hope you all have a fantastic day. If you're just jumping in, had a couple people asking about predictions. I think Bud was 38-23, and I was more in the line of 41-20. So we'll see what happens there. Go Noles. Beat the hell out of the Gators in one of the more enjoyable seasons that we've been able to have around here as a fan base. And then we move straight into recruiting, both our current roster and those that are yet to make their final decision. Awesome, y'all. Love it. Thanks to all our sponsors. Thanks to our Patreons. And we'll be back Saturday one way or another we'll be back Friday one way or another with an instant reaction podcast, and an instant reaction podcast that, in my opinion, should be a pretty fun one. So till then, we'll go play a little more Seminole win, maybe have a bourbon, and we'll all be ready for 7:30 on Friday night.